With the upcoming Indiana Jones film looking to finally put an end to the character, we'll be left with his 5 adventures and I guess all this other stuff. Harrison Ford has said that he doesn't want to pass the role to anybody else, sorry Chris Pratt, so there will be no more adventures for the beloved Archeologist. The legacy of Indiana Jones already kind of speaks for itself. The fame and popularity of the character spawned off many different properties of either people trying to capitalize on the success of these stories or new and beloved stories that took influence from Dr. Jones and his adventures. These weren't necessarily clones of Indiana Jones per se, but they definitely wouldn't be around without his impact on pop culture. 2 of the greater Indiana Jones clones are the Tomb Raider and Uncharted franchises. Both of these stories have introduced the world to new and beloved characters, sights to see, things to climb, and not so worthy film adaptations. But these stories in their true forms, that being the video games, are both incredibly well done, and in some ways even better than Indiana Jones. So I'm going to make a lot of you angry by comparing all 3 of these properties and then awarding these categories at the end of the video. And I'll be judging these categories based off of the story's purest and truest form. For Indiana Jones, that will be the films, and for Uncharted and Tomb Raider, that will be the video games.
They really can't be compared because they're different mediums.
I don't care, still gonna do it.
Why not just compare all the movies instead?
Because if I was doing that, Indiana Jones wins. Boom, this video is like a minute long. The success of Uncharted and Tomb Raider over the years can certainly be seen as equal to Indiana Jones, but in different ways. All of the Uncharted games are loved by critics and fans, and the new trilogy of Tomb Raider games are also very successful and I think highly underrated. So these are the entries I'll be judging these categories on: the 4 Indiana Jones films, the 4 Uncharted games, and these 3 Tomb Raider games. With early reviews saying this new installment is not so great, does Indiana Jones remain the king of the treasure hunters, or is he a relic best left in the past to make room for greater adventurers? So grab your whip, bow and arrow, or pickaxe and jot down some sketches in your journal as I decide who the best treasure hunter really is. So we start here with Uncharted, and the first entry of the series, Drake's Fortune. This series was created by the developer Naughty Dog, and up until this point, Naughty Dog had only created games like Crash Bandicoot and Jak and Daxter, so a photorealistic game involving real-world characters and plots seemed like a very tall order for the developers. Naughty Dog wanted to take the classic stories of treasure hunter films from the past and reinvent them for the 21st century, as well as make a game very different than what was in the market at the time. Where most games were very dark, dull, and gray, Naughty Dog wanted to deliver a gaming experience with lush colors and also maintain some sense of realism, both in terms of gameplay, art direction, and story. So they came up with a story about a treasure hunter named Nathan Drake, a descendant of Sir Francis Drake on the quest for El Dorado, the lost city of gold. Nathan is accompanied by Victor Sullivan and Elena Fisher, memorable characters with unique personalities, insights, and goals, something Naughty Dog was very conscious about making.
So we looked at a load of those matinee serials from the 30s, lots of chases, running around looking for treasure, unlikely allegiances with a whole crazy cast of characters, lots of narrow escapes and risky situations. So we took all of this stuff and then started to look at how we might be able to reinvent it for the 21st century.
The gameplay isn't exactly revolutionary, but it is fun and it's easy to see why it became a staple of the series. There's the platforming and mechanics of popular video games at the time, like Assassin's Creed, as well as third-person shooter and brawler mechanics that were also incredibly popular with a number of games. So what really made Uncharted stand out was the story. Like I said, the game centers on finding the lost city of El Dorado. Nathan Drake and Elena Fisher, who is a TV host, find the coffin of Sir Francis Drake, but when they open it up, it's devoid of any skeleton, finding only a lockbox and a journal. A band of pirates attacks them and they get away in Victor Sullivan, or Sully's, plane. Sully and Nathan leave Elena and head off into the jungle to search for the treasure. Where they actually find the treasure, a giant statue has been taken. They follow the tracks to the German U-boat and find a map inside to where it's been taken. But when Nathan gets back, he's intercepted by Gabriel Roman and his band of rival treasure hunters. They take the map, shoot Sully, and Nathan escapes, running into Elena, who greets him by punching him in the face. The two of them leave the jungle in Sully's plane, getting shot down and separated. They trade off different rescues and find out that Sully is actually alive, possibly working with Gabriel Roman. But when they get to him, he's actually not, and the journal actually saved his life by taking the bullet for him. So they get the map, find the body of Francis Drake, and eventually the treasure, though Roman and his guys are in possession of it. While the story has been at least semi-realistic up until this point, we learn that the treasure actually turns those who open it into weird flesh-eating monsters. So Drake, Sully, and Elena team up and get rid of the treasure and the rival treasure hunters, sending it to the bottom of lake where they sail off into the sunset. Which leads us to Uncharted 2 Among Thieves, which starts out on possibly the greatest opening scene of all time, and then does the old "let's take you back and see how all this happened" trick, where Nate runs into an old treasure hunting pal, Flynn, and an old flame, Chloe. They're looking for an old lamp, and Nate is convinced to join them because it might hold the key to Marco Polo's lost treasure. So the new cast of characters embark on this journey, and Nate is double-crossed by his old friend, Among Thieves, get it? But he's broken out of jail by Sully and Chloe, and they embark on a journey to get back at Flynn and his boss Lazarevich, finding a dagger and leading them to a temple in Nepal where Nate runs into another old flame, Elena. So they continue looking for the lost city of Shambhala, but are caught up by Flynn and Lazarevich. They take the dagger from Drake and company, so he goes to catch them on a train, and I think we all see where this is headed. Nathan gets shot and is forced to blow up the train, where he climbs to the top to safety and passes out. He wakes up in a nearby village, saved by Elena. They continue the search for Shambhala, get attacked by Yetis, and ultimately get caught up to by Lazarevich again. Lazarevich wants the power of the Sintamani stone that's in Shambhala because it's fabled that he would get immense powers from it. They ultimately find Shambhala and stop Lazarevich thanks to the Guardians of Shambhala, who were also in control of the Yetis, which weren't actually real Yetis, just people corrupted by the power of the stone. So Shambhala is destroyed and Nate chooses Elena over Chloe, which is an interesting choice for sure, but again they walk off into the sunset, leading us to Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception. We see Drake and Sully going to trade in Nate's famous ring, but the money they're offered is fake, leading to a brawl in the bar and what seems like the death of Nate and Sully by the hands of Catherine Marlowe. So of course, let's flash back to how Nate and Sully first met, back when Nate was a kid and going after the ring in the first place. A younger Sully and Catherine Marlowe were also going after the ring, and Sully takes in Nate as his apprentice. So in present day, you'll be shocked to hear that Nate and Sully aren't actually dead and it was all a setup. They're working with an undercover guy named Cutter and also Chloe, which raises some more questions about Nate's personal life. Together, they follow Marlowe's trail and figure out that she's looking for the Ubar, or Atlantis of the Sands. So Nate and Sully go one way and Chloe and Cutter go another way, looking for clues to the location of the city. They find two halves of an amulet that would lead them to their next clue, being chased by Marlowe's men along their journey, who have these strange mind-controlling darts, controlling Cutter in the process. They all escape Marlowe's men, but Cutter is injured, so Nate and Sully have to continue the journey alone. They decide to ask for some help, this time from Nate's now ex-wife, Elena Fisher. She helps them, and together the three of them find the location of the city, but Nate is shot with one of the mind-controlled darts, and all of them are captured. Nate wakes up on a pirate ship, shooting his way to Sully, only to find out it's not really Sully. So Nate blows up the ship and escapes to shore, reuniting with Elena, who tells him where Sully has actually been taken. So they plan to board a plane that's delivering supplies to Marlowe's men, but Nate doesn't let Elena come with him, saying it'll be too dangerous. Wherever Nate goes, all hell breaks loose, so the plane crashes and Nate rides one of the containers safely to the ground. He roams the desert until he finds a rundown village, of course occupied by Marlowe's men. With the help of some locals, Nate fights through Marlowe's men and learns that, of course, the city is cursed. So they save Sully and stop Marlowe from getting the treasure, dooming the city of Ubar in the process and escaping through the skin of their teeth again. So Nate, Sully, and Elena walk off into the... Okay, you get the picture by now. So this trilogy of games is undoubtedly one of the best video game trilogies of all time, but I noticed something on my playthrough of these games that I didn't really notice the first time around, and that's that they all kind of have the same story. I'm sure I'm gonna get hate from the Uncharted fans for this, but if I were to explain the story of Uncharted to anybody, I would say that it's about Nathan Drake and his band of merry friends looking for clues to an ancient lost civilization or artifact. They get followed by a rival group of treasure hunters, have to save each other, and in the end they have to destroy said lost city or artifact and walk off into the sunset. That would literally explain all three of these games. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, there was a formula that worked and they kept going with it. What separated these games from all other action games were the characters. These were very real and tangible characters that are so easy to fall in love with, so seeing their adventures together, however similar they might have been, was always a pleasure. So along came Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. Sometimes fourth installments aren't that necessary, we'll find that out later on, and sometimes it's best to leave a beloved franchise alone. Uncharted 4 wasn't one of those cases. We open Uncharted 4 with a flashback sequence to Nate and his brother Sam, along with their friend Rafe sneaking into a jail to look for clues for yet another treasure. This time, the pirate Henry Avery. They try to escape, but Sam is shot and seemingly dead. In the present time, Nate is with Elena. His treasure hunting days behind him, now he just plays Crash Bandicoot, but he does miss the treasure hunting lifestyle. When Sam makes an unexpected appearance, Nate is surprised and hears that Sam escaped jail by the help of his cellmate, who's given Sam 3 months to find Avery's treasure to repay his debts. So Nate embarks on this journey with his brother, lying to Elena about where he's going and what he's doing in the process. They sneak into an auction house with Sully, of course, and run into their old pal Rafe, who's still looking for Avery's treasure after all these years. Nate has literally uncovered 3 long-lost secrets, and this guy is still looking for the one. Find a new hobby, dude, come on. But they get the clue to where the treasure is and they continue their journey, though it comes to a halt when Elena catches up to what they're doing and all of Nate's lies. So Nate is really given the choice. Continue hunting for treasure with his brother or go back with Elena, and he chooses his brother. So they continue their search, finding yet another long-lost city, and the rival treasure hunters catch up with them, revealing that Sam isn't actually indebted to his prison mate and he was actually working for Rafe all along, trying to coax Nate out of retirement because his treasure hunting skills vastly outweigh Rafe's. Nate falls off a cliff, reunites with Elena and eventually Sully and his brother, and they continue searching for the treasure. They get to the treasure, and after Nate battles with Rafe, he gets more than his weight in gold, escaping off with everybody, making up with Elena, and going back to living the normal life. Years later, Nate and Elena's daughter find out about her parents' adventures, so they recount their tales to her, walking off into the sunset. So again, the story kind of follows the same format as the first 3. If it's not broken, don't fix it, but what separates this story among the others are the characters and personal stakes. We've had 3 games to develop Nate's band of friends, we've had some crazy action sequences, and this game certainly delivers on that front, but it's the drama between the characters and their relationships that really makes this game stand out. Nate's long-lost brother coming in and throwing a screw into his and Elena's relationship, and how Nate navigates that, gives the player an emotional connection and captivates them into these characters in a way that no Uncharted game had ever done before. It also helps that the graphics of this 2016 game are still probably the best looking graphics in any game ever. The gameplay is smoother and overall lends itself to being the best Uncharted game. As of 2017, which was a few years ago now, the franchise sold more than 41 million copies. So if you take into consideration the amount of years that have passed, the movie that came out and probably boosted sales figures, and the overall reputation that Uncharted has among PlayStation fans, those numbers are probably well beyond around 50 million, making Uncharted one of the most profitable video game franchises of all time. Each and every one of these games has won all kinds of Game of the Year awards, among many other technical and performance awards too. So with all this success, of course, came a movie adaptation. Not of Drake's Fortune, the first game in the series, just a mix of all of them, because that usually works out very well. Who's gonna play Nathan Drake? Well, Tom Holland is super popular and he'll sell some tickets, so why not? What about Sully, this aging, cigar-smoking, mustache-having sidekick? Mark Wahlberg. I wish I was kidding. There wasn't nearly enough love for this franchise when it came to the people behind the camera, leaving a lot of Uncharted fans, myself included, disappointed with the final product. It's a fine movie, sure, it's fun, but it didn't really feel like Uncharted. You know what did feel like Uncharted? That fan film with Nathan Fillion as Nathan Drake. Nathan Fillion is one of my all-time favorite actors, and he is so open about his love for this franchise, stating so many times that he would love to play Nathan Drake, so he was given that opportunity in this fan film, but unfortunately no feature film ever came out of it. I wish that this had done for Uncharted what that screen test for Deadpool did and got that film made. If you haven't seen this fan film, watch it. It's a joy for all Uncharted fans. Alright, on to the next one. While there are a lot of similarities between the Uncharted games and this new trilogy of Tomb Raider games, emphasis on the new trilogy, Tomb Raider and Lara Croft have a much bigger history than the Uncharted franchise does, as the first installment of the Tomb Raider games came out back in 1996. Since then, we've had 20 different games surrounding Lara, from many different generations of consoles to mobile games and just about everything that you can think of. But in 2013, this iconic video game character was in much need of a revamp. Given the ever-evolving culture of video games, it's easy to get left behind when you don't do too much or deliver worthy iterations of iconic characters. So the team at Square Enix took everything that we knew about Lara Croft, the badass adventurer, and flipped it on its head, opting for an origin story that would essentially reboot the character for newer audiences. There was a lot of heart dedicated to this project. In this behind-the-scenes video, which Zachary Levi is in for some reason.
Is Lara a video game icon? A sex symbol?
The team talks very passionately about wanting to do this character justice, not only to keeping true to what fans have liked for years, but to update Lara's story and have it resonate with modern audiences. There's plenty of evidence to suggest this game was influenced by Uncharted and games like it. The third-person puzzle platformer works very well with this franchise, but what really worked about this trilogy was the story. So the first entry in this trilogy centers on Lara as she's following in her father's footsteps, looking for treasure with a crew of fellow treasure seekers. They're looking for the island Yamatai, and subsequently the queen who once resided there, Himiko, or the sun god. Their boat gets stuck in a bad storm, leaving them shipwrecked on an offshore island where Lara gets knocked out and kidnapped by a cult that inhabits the island. So I won't lie, a lot of this game is running around in circles. You look for your friends, find them, and get captured. Look for your friends, find them, and then get captured. So on and so forth. So I'll skip past all that and talk about how this game develops Lara as a character. Like I said, it's an origin story, so we get to see Lara turn from a naive, treasure-seeking girl riddled with daddy issues to a capable survivor who endures a lot of trauma. In this story, Lara has to kill somebody in self-defense and really take the reins of helping this group survive. It deals with a lot of really dark and sensitive issues, giving the story a bit of realism to it. So you're a badass, but every badass in all kinds of stories has dealt with some kind of trauma, and we get to see firsthand how all this trauma impacts Lara. So they try to get off the island by the help of a rescue plane and then a rescue helicopter, but they're both hit down by lightning in the process. So something supernatural is definitely going on, that and, you know, these giant humanoid beings who are protecting the sun god. Oh yeah, so this island that they're on is actually Yamatai, and the cult wants to sacrifice Lara's best friend Sam so that way she can be the vessel for the new sun god. So it's up to Lara to stop that from happening and also destroy the body of the sun god so that way they can escape the island. which she does, and the few survivors of the shipwreck finally leave the island, taking many physical and emotional scars with them. So in Rise of the Tomb Raider, it takes a mark from Uncharted 2's opening, showing us what's happening in present day and then flashing back to telling us how it happened. Lara is told by her dad's ex-girlfriend that she might know the location to the tomb of the immortal prophet that her father had spent all his life searching for. So Lara sets out on the journey, finding a rival group of treasure seekers looking for it, of course, and they're called the Trinity Organization. But Lara doesn't find the artifact, so she blows up the Trinity Organization and heads back home to reunite with old pal Jonah from the first game. She tells him that she knows where to find the true artifact, and it's in Serbia. One of the Trinity members hears this and attacks them, so they're off to find the treasure before the enemy finds it first. Back in present time, Lara finds some locals and gets threatened by them because they think she's part of the Trinity Organization. She's not, and continues searching for the treasure, getting captured and brought in with her dad's ex-girlfriend. They're both interrogated, and surprise, Dad's ex is actually the head rival treasure hunter. Lara escapes and meets Jacob, another local, who says that he knows what she's looking for and where to find it. The rest of the game centers on Lara's choices about this immortal artifact. She wants to have it for herself because it was her father's life work, but she gets to know Jacob and the locals who are there to protect it at all costs. Lara learns that Jacob is actually the immortal being, but he trusts her enough to show her where the artifact is. There's a great giant battle, and Lara decides to destroy the object once and for all, killing Dad's ex's chances of getting better and also ending Jacob's immortality. Lara learns that her dad was killed by the Trinity Organization, so she confronts his ex, but she says that she didn't kill him because she truly loved him. Before Lara can decide on killing her or not, a sniper takes out Dad's ex, and over the radio we hear the sniper asking if he should take out Lara too, but another voice says not yet. So in the third installment, Lara is off to stop the apocalypse from happening, or cause it in the first place, but anyways, Lara tries to stop the Trinity Organization, finding yet another city, becoming friends with the locals to stop the bad guys, stops them, and then goes home to await another installment. Yeah, that's kind of it for this one. Wasn't really my favorite story-wise. So like I said, this series does share a lot of similarities with Uncharted, but it's also kind of like the R-rated version of Uncharted. It's much darker and has some depressing vibes all around it. Even though Drake's treasures are often not as glamorous as he thought they'd be, the games all have a pretty cheerful tone around them. And the treasures in the Tomb Raider games are also not very glamorous, but they're treated with so much more weight and darkness around them. I suppose the easiest way to see this is the ratings for the game. Uncharted is rated T and Tomb Raider is rated M. One of the things that always took me out of the story of Uncharted a little bit is how much killing Nathan Drake really does. I mean, across all 4 games, this guy is like a supreme mass murderer. Sure, the people he kills aren't good guys, but he still kills quite a few people. Lara kills too, but when she takes her first life in the 2013 Tomb Raider, she's then riddled with trauma and issues from that point forward. Even though the person she killed was arguably worse than any of the people that Nathan Drake ever killed. Tomb Raider also heavily leans on the supernatural aspects of the treasures that she finds. In Uncharted, they had this wild twist at the end of Drake's fortune that there was a supernatural creature made from the treasure in El Dorado. They had a bit more with the Yetis in Among Thieves, and then the Jinn in Uncharted 3, but it did away with anything supernatural in Uncharted 4. Plus, if you look at the legacy of Uncharted, the first thing that comes to mind isn't necessarily supernatural elements. It's probably not for Tomb Raider either, but it's much more present in these games. Maybe you disagree with me on that, but playing these games, that was certainly the impression that was left on me. Also, there isn't yet a 4th Tomb Raider game, so perhaps a 4th game will do away with the supernatural aspects just like Uncharted did. Alright, enough with the comparison, back to the extensive history of Tomb Raider. That's right, the movies. In 2001, the height of critically acclaimed video game to movie adaptations, it was only a matter of time before one of gaming's most beloved, pointy, pixelated heroines got her big screen adaptation. So that came with Lara Croft Tomb Raider. Lara was played by Angelina Jolie, which I cannot fault them for doing.
A sex symbol.
The movie did alright financially and wasn't really too loved by critics or audiences, but it was also far from being the worst video game adaptation. This warranted a sequel, Lara Croft Tomb Raider: The Cradle of Life. This one actually did slightly better with critics, slightly worse with audiences, but didn't exactly make a ton of money, so plans for the sequel were scrapped. As time went on, the franchise evolving and coming out with the reboot, producers thought, well, why not give this another go? So they made Tomb Raider, a movie based largely on the game and pretty faithfully adapted, I might add. This time around, Alicia Vikander was Lara Croft, yet another decision I do not fault them for doing. And despite being the best received film out of the three and making the most money, a sequel was ultimately canceled in favor of a reboot. This time they're doing a TV show. There's not too much information on the show at this moment, but apparently it's going to come out in 2023, and this time Hayley Atwell is going to be Lara Croft. Yet another decision I cannot fault them for doing. So the legacy lives on in a lot of different ways. The future actually seems pretty bright for Lara at this moment. Time will tell how bright or dim that future really is. Alright, time for the big one. The undisputed granddaddy of this genre is, of course, Dr. Henry Walton Jones, more commonly referred to as Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones was actually not called that at first. Some alternate universe out there, George Lucas got his way and the series was called Indiana Smith. But Indiana Jones was first conceived by George Lucas following the success of Star Wars. He workshopped the idea a bit with his pal Steven Spielberg, who went on to eventually direct the project. But they needed the right guy for the job, or else everything they've thought up in their heads is for nothing. Who better than the guy riding the high wave of success from Lucas's last film, a former carpenter by the name of Harrison Ford. And the rest, as they say, is history. Just kidding. Raiders of the Lost Ark followed the famed archaeologist going after the Ark of the Covenant. He's going against a rival group of treasure hunters. I'm not too sure if I can even say the name of this group without being demonetized, so let's call them Yahtzees. So he enlists the help of a young bartender and an old friend, and they set off to go and get the Ark. They find it, but the Yahtzees capture them and the artifact. The Yahtzees open the Ark, all get killed by it, and Indiana saves the day and the Ark of the Covenant, and they set off into the sunset. Wow, this really is just a copy of Uncharted, isn't it? The film went on to be a resounding success and rocketed Harrison Ford to unbelievable levels of stardom. A sequel was of course greenlit, though both Lucas and Spielberg wanted it to be darker in tone because they were both going through divorces and wanted everybody else to be as miserable as them. This film had an upgraded budget of $28 million as opposed to the $18 million that the first one had. So a lot of their wilder stunt ideas from the first film were implemented into this one. This film certainly was darker, and it was very different from the first film. Indiana finds himself with a wannabe actress and an Oscar award-winning actor in the jungle when they uncover a cult that wants to sacrifice children and use these stones to take over the world. Indiana stops them and they set off into the sunset. With some proper coping time and hopefully a bit of therapy, Lucas and Spielberg went back to the drawing board and took what worked from each of the first two films. They came to a decision for the artifact in this film to be the Holy Grail, and also to add Sean Connery as Indy's father, using the Grail as a metaphor for son seeking reconciliation with his father and vice versa. So this one is about a treasure hunter with daddy issues. Now they're just copying Tomb Raider. So Indy is hired by the government to go and find the Holy Grail before, you guessed it, the Yahtzees can find it. Along the way, Indy reunites with his long-lost father and they find the Grail, but realize their relationship is far more important than any artifact. Aww. After the trilogy, the studio wanted more films. These were huge hits and more money was awaiting them with the release of another Indiana Jones adventure, but neither Lucas or Spielberg could really find the right story for another film. They had a few ideas, a crazy alien flick to resemble a 1950s movie that both Spielberg and Harrison Ford outright rejected because that's such a crazy idea and that film would never be made. So they shifted focus on maybe telling a story where the Russians were the bad guys. Some drafts were written by a variety of different screenwriters, one of them depicting the Yahtzees as bad guys again, but after making Schindler's List, Spielberg said that he didn't want to make any more satirical films about that group of people. Lucas finally had a script involving aliens that he wanted to show Spielberg. Then in the late 90s, a plethora of alien films came out, and Spielberg said that he didn't want to do anything involving aliens ever again.
Liar.
Lucas said, fine, I have this other side project I want to work on anyway, and that seemed to be the end of it, until Steven Spielberg's son asked him when the next Indiana Jones film was coming out, so we can thank him for everything going forward. Lucas and Spielberg met and conceived the idea of Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. There were many different script rewrites, including a ton of different names like Indiana Jones, Destroyer of Worlds, and Indiana Jones, the Atomic Ants. But it eventually led to the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Releasing in 2008 with the highest budget of any Indiana Jones film ever, we saw an older Indy go on an adventure with his son, but he didn't actually know it was a son until later in the movie. What a coincidence, and reunites with Marion, his love interest from the first film. They race against the Russians this time around and uncover the existence of the Crystal Skull, an alien artifact. So this movie actually isn't that bad. I didn't like it for years because I didn't think it held up to the first three, but honestly, it's just as campy and ridiculous as any of the first three films are. I don't know, I think this movie gets a very bad rap, and I actually find it to be a fulfilling sequel to the franchise. Maybe people will realize it's not so bad when this next one comes out. Now this leads us to the Dial of Destiny, the very last Indiana Jones film. How will it stack up to the rest of the films? Will it add to the legacy of the character, or will it tarnish it? Guess we'll see in a few days. Or maybe you're watching this later and you already know. Welcome to the second annual awards ceremony hosted by, voted by, and narrated by me. We're going to be going over these categories today, and whoever gets the most wins will walk out of here tonight crowned the best treasure hunter. We got all the biggest stars here. Look right here, we got Nathan Drake. No, don't wink at me. You're gonna let people know that this is all rigged. Lara Croft just arrived. Oh, okay. So let's head on inside and start the awards ceremony, but we have to cut to commercial first, just like all the awards shows do. All right, starting off with the least interesting one and making our way to the most interesting one, we have Best Supporting Character. So the winner of this category is Sully. Yeah, there's some great supporting cast members in each of these franchises. Maybe if Henry Jones Sr. was in all of the Indy movies, he would have snagged this one, but Sully's always around when you need him, and he genuinely cares about Drake even if he doesn't always show it. Next up, we have Best Weapon. Now, do I mean best as in the ability to do harm unto others? No, I mean the most iconic. If I had meant that, it could have been any number of guns that any of these characters use, or any of the treasures for that matter, but I gotta go with Indiana Jones's whip. I can't tell you how many times I tried to make a whip in my backyard out of rope or something like that, and always eventually ended up hurting myself and throwing it away, but it was a lot of times. If you ever see a whip anywhere, the first thing that pops into your mind is Indiana Jones. None of the other heroes really have a weapon like that, so obviously I've gotta go with the whip. Now, these people are all treasure hunters, so who had the coolest find? We've got all sorts of artifacts, treasures, civilizations to go over, and almost every single one of them end in complete and total disaster for the opposing team. But the one that I think stands out above them all is the Holy Grail. Now, maybe I just have a bias here, but just like Indy's whip, whenever I see an old-looking goblet, I always think back on this scene and the many different cups that could be the Holy Grail. It's definitely smaller scale than a lot of the other finds that these treasure hunters have on their belt, but in that way I also think it makes this one unique. A big part of all these franchises are the action set pieces. Of course, some are more bombastic than others, maybe a bit unrealistic in some cases, but that's the fun of this genre. Either watching somebody else do a feat that's humanly impossible, or playing through it, dying a bunch of times before you finally hit that checkpoint or get past all the danger. There were plenty to go through across all of these franchises, but the one that sticks out to me is when Indy gets in the fridge, the train derailment scene from Uncharted 2. This one has always stuck out in my mind, mostly because it's what we open the game on. There's all this mystery and suspense about how it happened, and slowly seeing the events leading up to the derailment is always a joy to play through. This business is a dangerous one, and our heroes are unfortunately forced to, murder a bunch of people in the pursuit of what they want, sometimes mercilessly. But who would I want backing me in a fight? The answer, to me, is extremely obvious, and that's Lara Croft. She might not have as high a body count as Nathan Drake, or maybe she does, or maybe it's higher, but give me Lara over the other two any day when it comes to survivability, craftiness, and overall fighting abilities. Alright, I was told I have to do this one by upper management, so here's the best entry in each franchise. Indiana Jones has a few good options. I think most would say Raiders of the Lost Ark, but for me, it's The Last Crusade. I've always liked this one the best. There's just a different quality to it that none of the others have. For Tomb Raider, all three of these games are truly incredible. From a gameplay standpoint, I'd probably go with Shadow, but overall, I'm going to give it to Rise of the Tomb Raider. And for Uncharted, I think I've already stated this in the past, so for all the reasons that I said up there in the Uncharted section, it's for sure Uncharted 4: A Thief's End.
Hurry up, I want to go home.
Alright, calm down, because here we are, the last award of the night, and that's Best Character Arc. If you know anything about how I rank characters, I usually go by how great their complete arc is. Now this one's a bit unfair, because 2/3 and maybe even 3/3 of the characters aren't actually done with their arcs. Lara Croft still has some mysteries to solve and artifacts to find. I haven't yet seen how they're gonna end Indy's journey, so Nathan Drake is really the only one who has this completed character arc. I was gonna give this one to you anyways, stop looking at me like that. But really, as it stands, each character goes through their own arc in each story, as they should, but Nathan really has a solid bow tie wrapped ending. He's a character with a lot of flaws. He really was kind of an asshole for a lot of the time until his company and his friends around him change him as a person. That's what separates Uncharted from all these other stories and treasure seekers. His crew around him is what forces the character arc out of him, making me believe that the true treasure in all of these stories are the friends we meet along the way.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
What? You don't like that answer? Fine then, looky here, I found one last card. Most iconic character. Oh, I wonder who this could... It's Indiana Jones. Neither of these two franchises would be here without him. Regardless of the outcome of this fifth film, Indiana Jones will always reign supreme. He's the person most people associate with treasure hunting. He's got the whip, the satchel, the fedora. You really can't beat him at his own game. So here's the tallies. This is just what I think, but an argument could be made for any of these characters to reign supreme. They all have fantastic stories, character arcs, supporting characters, insane out-of-this-world stunts, insane out-of-this-world artifacts, and quite honestly, all three of these franchises competing is great for fans of this genre because iron sharpens iron, and all three of these franchises, all three of these characters, are absolute masters in their own unique ways. Wait a minute, what's this right here? There's more treasure hunters? Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah.